There's a comic strip, Peanuts, one time, that has the Lucy, the temperamental little girl who wears her emotions on her sleeve, and she was crying bitter tears, and she screams, "You promised me a birthday party, and now I can't have one. It's not fair." And her brother is Linus, and he's the rational one, and he pulls his sister to the side and says, "You're not using the right strategy. Why not go up to Mom and say to her, 'I'm sorry, dear mother. I admit I've been bad, and you were right to cancel my party, but from now on, I shall try to be good.'" And Lucy thinks about it a little bit. You see her in the other panels, like rehearsing this, just to see what it sounds like. And she's saying, "I'm sorry, dear mother. I admit I've been bad. You were right to cancel my party, but from now on, I shall try to be good." And at the last panel, she cries out, "I'd rather die." And Lucy shows us what we really all need know to be true, that the change that needs to take place in our lives, the repentance, it isn't fun, so we really don't want to do it. And thank goodness God is so patient with us. Today's gospel seems to portray a harsh God when we hear this parable of the fig tree. But in reality, Jesus is trying to give us the message that God is very patient. Because God is the farmer, the owner of an orchard, and there's one tree that for 3 years does not bear fruit. And the soil is not the best. So it's time to replace the tree for one that bears fruit. He was very patient. And then the gardener, who also represents God, working for the owner. Interesting that Jesus, when he rose from the dead, Mary Magdalene thought, when she met Jesus, that he was a gardener. The gardener says, "Let me take care of it and do a little extra attention and care. Let's give it 1 more year. And then, if nothing, then we'll cut it down." So we run into this problem that God is very patient. But like Lucy, we're not always so anxious to make changes in our lives, because it isn't fun to make these kinds of changes. Which means that God's patience isn't always a great motivator. I mean, wouldn't it be different if roughly, you never know for sure, but roughly every other weekend you came to Saturday Mass here and I made an announcement that, God spoke to me in my dreams, and I call out a name and that person comes forward, like burnt toast, gone. Because that person just didn't make enough efforts in the last couple of years. That might be a motivator. Paul is telling us in the second reading, when he's talking to Christians who are grumbling among themselves and arguing and fighting who's got the better spiritual gifts and who really has authority in the community. And he writes to them saying, "You know what? Remember God's chosen people, when they left Egypt, they went through a baptism of Moses when they passed through their baptismal water of the Red Sea. And they had kind of a Eucharist, because they had manna, bread that came down from heaven. And they even drank a special water from a spiritual rock that followed them in the desert." And he says, and they grumbled against God and against Moses. And they didn't make the changes in their lives. And very few of them entered the promised land. Just Joshua and Caleb of the adults. And so he says to the Christians in Corinth, just because we've been baptized and we're receiving spiritual food and drink from the altar, doesn't mean it's okay for us to be grumbling among ourselves. Baptism, being a Catholic, church attendance, doesn't guarantee that we're doing everything God is asking us to do. It's likely that each and every one of us has to make some changes. And it's almost guaranteed that most of us know what those changes need to be. Let us not delay. Let us not take advantage of God's patience. His kindness and His mercy endure forever. But our lives do not, here on earth anyway. So let us use today and make the changes we need to make.